In this video, I'm going to share a presentation that Jim Caston and I did for the Swain County Genealogical and Historical Society. It was about 2 weeks ago. The event took place in Bryson City, North Carolina, and we talked about our new cookbook, Jim and I's new cookbook, celebrating Southern Appalachian food, recipes, and stories from mountain kitchens. We really appreciated everyone that come out to hear us that night. It was a great time. We really enjoyed chatting with people after it was over and before it even got started. It was a very nice event. And the kind folks at the society, they let me video it, they let me film it so that I could share it with you. So before I kind of just let that part go and let you see how it went and see the folks that were there, and it was kind of, Jim talked a little bit, I talked a little bit, and then we let people ask questions. That was my favorite part, was kind of interacting with people. But when I told the kind folks there that I wanted to share the video, I told them I'd be glad to tell you a little bit about their organization. So they typed up something for me to share with you, so I'm going to read that to you now. The Swain County Genealogical and Historical Society's purpose is to preserve historical and genealogical records and to stimulate educational interest in the history of Swain County as well as Western North Carolina. The Society meets the first Tuesday of each month at the Swain County Business Education and Training Center. That's at 45 East Ridge Drive, Bryson City, at 6:30 p.m. Participants enjoy a program focused on various historical and/or genealogical related topics. The meetings are open to the public and there is no admission charge. Our research center is located at 91 Brindle Street in Bryson City. It is filled with family histories, books about marriages, births, deaths, county histories, microfilm, and other records from Swain County, Western North Carolina, and counties from states bordering North Carolina. The following books are available for purchase: the Swain County Heritage Book, Cemeteries of Swain County, Marriage Records for Swain County, the 1971 Swain County Centennial Souvenir Booklet, and others. Dwayne Oliver gave the rights to our society to reprint his picture book entitled Along the River, People and Places and Remembered Lives, 2nd edition, and those are available for purchase, as well as original copies of other books by Dwayne Oliver. You're invited to visit our research center Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It is suggested that you call before your visit to ensure that the facility will be open. Membership in the Society is for a calendar year and includes a copy of each of the Bone Rattlers, our quarterly journal published during that year. For further information, to order books, or to join the Society, please call the Society Research Center at 828-488-2932. And I'll put that information, those addresses and that phone number, in the description below so you can easily find it if you didn't have time to jot it down. Now, I've been to a lot of events that the Society helped with or either hosted themselves, and always greatly enjoyed myself. I wish I knew more about genealogy. I don't. I've not had time to really dig in, but I know lots of people who use their resources, and they say it's just an amazing kind of a whole, you go to that one place and you get all this amazing information. If you're hunting for genealogical ties or any kind of information about, as kind of indicated, Swain County, but also just Western North Carolina as a whole. So if you're into that, I really encourage you to check them out and give them a call, go visit them. But also, they're kind of really nice and didn't ask for any support. But if you'd like to support them, as you might imagine, doing all that takes time and energy and, of course, money. So if you're interested in supporting them, either by buying one of those wonderful books or becoming a member, even if you don't really get to go be part of them, it'd be better if you did. But even if you don't, if you'd like to buy a membership, maybe because you had someone from Swain County or from Western North Carolina, I know that they would really, really appreciate that. And it would also be helping them out and helping them kind of continue their endeavor, which is kind of along the same lines as mine, is really holding on to the culture of this area and the heritage. And they really dig into the families, into that part, which is always fascinating. Even if they're not my family, I think it's fascinating. So I hope that you will definitely check them out. I hope you enjoy this presentation from me and Jim. And if you've not picked up your copy of the book yet, the cookbook, I'll leave that in the description below, a place where you can go pick up your own copy.
I'm Elise Bryson. I'm president of the Swain County Genealogy Society, and I want to welcome everyone here. We've got some announcements before we go to our program. The first thing I'd like to do, this is so close to Memorial Day, and it's come up several times, and I would like for all the veterans in the room to stand up, please. Thank you very much for your service. It's definitely okay. Our program tonight will be celebrating Southern Appalachian food. Our presenters are Jim Cassida and Tipper Pressley. They've just published a book with recipes and stories from mountain kitchens. Tipper has been writing about all things Appalachian since 2008 on the popular blog Blind Hog in the Acorn. In 2020, she developed a YouTube channel. She was awarded the 2020 Appalachia Award, and in 2022, an Appy Award for her video work. She also has twin daughters who are very musically talented. And we're glad to welcome Jim Cassida back, as he has presented for us before. He's a retired professor who has authored I have 17 books, but I think I heard you say a different number a little bit ago.
Well, it sort of depends on how you define authored. I've got about 22 or 24 original books, and I've contributed to over 100, so wow. I don't know how many, but it doesn't matter.
And he's published many articles too, so in addition to writing a weekly column for the Smoky Mountain Times, he holds positions with several magazines. So please welcome them as they present information about their new book.
Thank you, Elise. Appreciate all y'all turning out to listen to a hillbilly beast, that's me, and a hillbilly beauty. I mean, actually 3 hillbilly beauties, although 2 of them won't be talking. Tipper and her twin daughters. We're delighted to be here. I don't have much trouble talking. Daddy used to say that, son, you could talk the ears off a Georgia mule, and about all I can say about that is the apple didn't fall far from a tree. I want to give a little background to this book. I need to thank my brother Don for first introducing me to Tipper. He came across the Blind Pig in the Acorn sometime not long after Tipper started it, and what a work of love it's been. 365 days a year, every year since he first began, and that's an impressive amount of work any way you want to look at it. But Don said, he sent me an email, said you need to look at this, and gave me the link. I read it for 3 or 4 days, and emailed him back. I said, she's the real deal. And that pretty much sums it up. She says, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but I'm deeply or hopelessly in love with all things Appalachian. And that's exactly what she does on her blog. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it a vlog?
Yeah.
Okay, I've had a good day technologically speaking, because I'm about as ignorant as they come. But that's a more recent vintage, and 3 or 4 times a week she will publish a YouTube video, and some indication of her appeal and the subject matter's importance is that she's got close to 250,000 followers for her vlog, and that speaks pretty eloquently about that. Now, I met Tipper not too long after I started reading Blind Pig in the Acorn. She came over to Bryson City, and I can't remember whether I came up especially for that or was just there, but Don and I were both present. Don had invited her over, And she didn't want any part of either one of us. She came to talk to our daddy. Daddy was still alive at the time. He lived to be 101, and he probably was 99 or 100 at the time, but fortunately he was cogent to the end and loved to talk. So that Tipper got to interview him, and diplomatic genes don't run very deep in the Cassidy family. If you've been around Don, you know that. I'm worse. And I asked Tipper, and looking back, it was a terrible thing to do, but I did anyway. I asked her about her blog, and we talked a little bit about it. And I said, are you making money off of it? Well, she should have said, that's none of your business. That would have been the appropriate answer. But she didn't. She's far too nice. And she said, I'd like to. And that planted a seed in my mind. Not many of them take sprout, but that one did. It took root and grew. And before too awful long, I may be patting myself on the back a little too much, but I'd like to think I was a bit of a mentor to her. I was trying anyway, whether I was or not. I was trying to help her along. And at some point I started pushing her, saying, Tipper, you need to write a book. I mean, I was seeing all these scrumptious recipes, and I knew a little bit about cooking. Well, you can look at my profile and tell I know a little bit about eating. And since I cook for myself, that pretty well tells the rest of it. She was decidedly resistant, and I was decidedly persistent. And eventually, I convinced her, and I thought I'd been really subtle in bringing it all about. She later disabused me of that notion and let me know that she had seen through me from day one. But I did convince her, and the way she put it was, you just be like a teacher, and I'll be a student, and give me my homework. And that's how the book got started. Now, I had a lot of background in cookbooks. My late wife and I had written 8 or 9. I knew the approaches, the ropes, and so forth. And this book actually had a bad start, because the first submission we made to a publisher was rejected. And Tipper took it in stride. I was crushed. I'd had a bunch of proposals, and I'd never had one rejected before. I felt like I'd been kicked directly in the butt. Well, I had, or we had. But I didn't give up. Sent it to another publisher, and they have, for the most part, been a dream to work with. And so it all came about in fine fashion. And what underlies the book is a couple of concepts. I'm going to use 2 quotes. Historians are fond of saying, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And this book tries to show where the two of us have been as far as matters of food concerned. Both of us, many, in fact probably most of the recipes, trace back to my mother, our grandmother, or to various members of her family. In other words, some of them are original with us, but a lot of them go back multiple generations. And so we're trying to show where we have been, food-wise. The other quote comes from a fairly well-known Canadian songwriter from Alberta, Ian Tyson. Now, that probably won't mean much to you, but I bet you know the song 4 Strong Winds. Ian Tyson wrote that song, and Ian Sylvia had a major hit record out of it. He also wrote a song that I am greatly enamored of about Charlie Russell, the Western painter and writer, and he's paying tribute to Charlie Russell. And he describes what drove Charlie Russell, or what his motivation was as a painter. And the line reads, or sings, got to get it all down before it's all gone. And that's exactly what we are trying to do in this book is to get it all down before it's all gone. Now, Tipper took care of her assignments in wonderful fashion. She also asked me a bunch of questions, and some of them I could actually answer from previous experience. But she carried the bigger part of the load, photography-wise. The recipes, I haven't ever counted, but they're split pretty much 50-50. We cooperated together on the narrative material. I did the indexing, which is the ultimate pain with any book. It's the single worst thing about doing a book is the indexing. If we ever do another one, Tipper, you've got the index. But we had some help. My brother Don has several photos in the book, including one of an absolutely glorious patch of ramps. But they did contribute, as did the two girls here. I think both of y'all have a photo or more in there, and I know that they, Don called them the twin piglets, and I hope they'll accept that. But they were piglets in the sense of guinea pigs testing recipes. I know, and you got to benefit from that in a major way. So that's a little bit of the background. It comes first and foremost from a shared love of Appalachia and from my dogged determination that Tipper needed to round out what was a very bright and shiny penny, and she's as bright as a new penny, by doing a book. And what you've got is a result. And I'm going, Daddy used to say, stand up, speak up, and shut up. I'm going to shut up and let Tipper talk.
Jim was much too kind, all those things he said about me. Very nice. Thank you, Jim. You definitely are my mentor, for sure. And I appreciate you. I appreciate Don and Susan, too. And I could have never, that's what I told Jim, was I said, finally you had to tell me that you'd help me write the book, because you knew that was the only way I was ever going to do it. I still wouldn't have wrote a cookbook or any other book without Jim's help. So he knew that was the only way it was ever going to get done. And I am so thankful to him that he did keep pushing until we got it done, because I think it's really an important book. I think it's one, of course, our families will treasure. I hope all of you who've bought it, that you'll treasure it. But I think it's a treasure for people like me who are really interested in the area that we live in. Not just the Southern Appalachian Mountains, but all of Appalachia. Of course, Jim and I, this is where we're from. This is where our families, all those family recipes are from. But there's so many of those that are common as you go on to, Kentucky, West Virginia, on up. There's so many common things. And I think people will really, I think it's going to stand the test of time for people who are interested in things like Jim and I are. Not to mention the wonderful food that's in it. If you cook the recipes, you'll find out. And a lot of you, I know, are probably familiar with the same things. If you grew up on beans and taters and cornbread and biscuits and orange tater cakes and sweetbread. My daddy always made sweetbread. So all those things are in it. Another reason I think it's important, along with all those wonderful recipes, is that one of the things Jim was talking about, how long I've been talking about all things Appalachian, primarily writing until the videos, but since 2008, that's almost unheard of for a blogger. I'm a very old blogger. Most people don't last that long. But one of the things I love to talk about is the way we talk, the way we speak. So in the very front of the book, those of you who've already picked it up, you'll notice there's kind of a little part of vocabulary, several pages of vocabulary about connected to food, of course, since it's a cookbook. So I think that's really important that history is in there, because even if you're from here or if you're not from here, you probably understand that a lot of the way that we speak is going away. So it's important to me to hold on to those, even when it comes to those cooking terms. I think it's really important. I also really love the photos that are in the book. Western Carolina University helped us a lot with the historic photos that are in it. If you flip through it, you can see those. And I know Jim was really pleased that several are from Swain County, from right here. And I was beyond pleased that some of the ones we got to pick were Gid Laney's photos from Brasstown, from my home where I'm at. So that was really special to me. But even the other photos that Jim kind of mentioned, the ones about Susan, the centerfold girl, and Dawn's wonderful ramp photo, and the ones the girls took. There's a lot that I took, and some that Jim took too. And those are, those are part of history too. Those are a great example of Jim and I are different generations, so kind of seeing the Southern Appalachia through our eyes. The wonderful ones that Jim has of the outdoors and of his garden. One of my very favorite photos in the whole book is one I took years ago before I ever dreamed of writing a book, and Jim hadn't quite pushed me into it at that time, but it's my daddy's hand as he made gravy. I was getting him to make gravy so I could write about it on the Blind Pig and the Acorn, so that's why I took the photo. But all those wonderful photos in it, I think, will really be a great snapshot, as well as the recipes and the foodways and the history that, like Jim said, it's all there, but those photos just add something to it. Again, being able to see it through mine and Jim's eyes, and then also, I can't help but wonder what would Gid Laney think. I mean, goodness, what would he think if he knew that his photos were being used in a cookbook, as well as the other photographers that were from Swain County and then other areas.
Bennett. Many of you knew or knew of Doc Kelly, and there are Doc Kelly photos in the book.
In addition to people, I think it's going to be an important work for people like me that are really interested in the history and the culture of Appalachia as a whole, and the Southern Appalachians, I guess, specifically. Not just us that love Appalachia like me, but people all over the world. What do we have in common? We all have to eat, no matter where you're from. And when you eat, especially thinking of your childhood growing up, those food memories, they become who you are, whether it's eating biscuits at Grandma's or, even Katie's my Fisher girl now, even if it's memories of stopping at the local gas station for your beanie weenies, or your knee-high or whatever it was from the day you got to go fishing with Papaw. All those things really become part of who you are, and I think that this book is a prime example of that. So, but along with honoring all that, mine and Jim's family and those wonderful recipes, there's so many people that I've come across since 2008 that they have those wonderful memories of the leather breeches or the sweet bread like I was talking about, but they don't remember how. They don't remember how to make it like Grandma did, or Grandpa, or Mother, or Aunt Pearl, or whoever it was. And so I think it's really great for them. I've already had people, when did it come out, Jim? May 1st?
May 1st.
Yeah, I've already had people tell me, now I know, now I can cook like Grandmother did, now I know, I can. So I think that's a wonderful thing too. Our busy modern lives, we're so far away from a lot of people. They're not able to cook like they want to. It's easy to pick up something. It's easy to get something out of the freezer section of the grocery store or whatever. And you just quickly lose touch of those recipes. Well, how did they do leather breeches? Did they soak them? Did it have to be a certain kind of bean? How did they, string it? All those kind of things. So I think it's really, again, like Jim's quote that he used, it's just, here it is. It's all right there for people like that. And I've already had wonderful experience with people telling me that, like, now I have it. Now I can do this. I can relive this for my family. Like what I enjoyed when I was a child. Because as we're growing up, I know my one grandmother, my mama, she died when I was in 5th grade, and I loved her dearly and miss her till this day. But I sure wasn't, when I was in 5th grade, thinking about someday I'm going to make fried corn for my kids. I was in 5th grade. I remember her biscuits and her fried corn and her sweet tea. Those are the things I remember. But I certainly wasn't paying attention. And even my other grandma, Granny Gazzy, she died when I was pregnant with Corey and Katie, but she'd been sick a very long time before that. So again, I was a teenager when I wish I had been saying, Granny, show me how to make your sweet potatoes. They're the best ever. Let me watch, but I didn't do that because I was running around and playing. So for a lot of people, thankfully I have my mom, Corey and Katie's granny, to show me a lot of things. And I have Matt's family, his mother. But for so many people, they've lost that touchstone of those wonderful foodways that they grew up with. So I think mine and Jim's book will be really important for them too. And probably my favorite part of the whole book, other than my picture of Pap that I really love with his hand, is I really think it's important. Me and Jim both, from the very beginning, we first started talking about it, knew that it was really important, of course, to put our favorite recipes in it. One of my very favorite ones is a cake, Arch potato cake. It's my favorite cake of all. But it was really important to not only put our favorites when it comes to things like that, but to put all the recipes and the foodways connected to the good earth, if you will, like the gardening, the wonderful hunting that Jim does. My husband's a hunter, so those wonderful recipes. Someone was telling us that they had Jim's venison cookbook. It's a great cookbook too. But all those kind of recipes was really important to us, because that was just a direct connection again to the culture of Appalachia, Southern Appalachia, to our families, was living from the land. And whether that was, your corn and taters and beans you grew, or if you were harvesting the wild ramps, the mushrooms, the wild persimmons and blackberries, those kind of things, or if you were, my fisher girl over there bringing me fish home to clean and fry up, or my husband bringing a deer home, all those things. So I think that's, to me, probably, you agree, Jim, one of the most important aspects of the book, that it has a strong theme of that, of being part of the good earth. You got something else to say, or
Yeah.
I want to let people ask questions too.
Yeah,
Jim's going to say.
and we do, this is to be from this point on, after I get through a brief commercial interlude, to be an audience participation. And the only stupid question is an unasked question. So we greatly encourage you to ask. But if you're not getting Tipper's blog or her vlog, just go online if you can use a computer, and I can, and I'll guarantee there is no one in this room more technologically inept than me. Tipper is my webmaster, and I couldn't have a website if it wasn't for Tipper. I can write the words, but I just don't know what to do with them. So I send them to her, and she takes care of it from that point on. That's been a blessing. She also, and she's going to run out of here in tears, but I'm going to tell it anyhow. Dawn discovered that she's a fifth cousin, and I'm going to proudly claim her. She may not want to claim in reverse, but taking a step further, there are a lot of people in this room who have deep roots in this region. And I'll almost guarantee you, if you know enough about genealogy and you dig far enough, that you're kin to half the people in the county that have lived here a long time. And I keep telling Don there's one or two questionable characters I'm afraid he's going to link us up to before all is said and done. I'll be following in Arthur Blanton's footsteps, or be kin to Al Dorsey. But a few of you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, I know Diane knows exactly who I am. But to get her blog or vlog, all you got to do is go to Google Blind Pig in the Acorn, or Google Celebrating Appalachia, and you'll have the information to sign up, and from there on you'll get it. I produce something, she produces something once a day, I produce something once a month, and that's about the nature of our comparable work rates, I guess. She has got an incredible amount of energy. But I do a monthly e-newsletter, fairly long, several thousand words. It always includes recipes. That is the one consistent factor in it. And some of you get it, I know. But I've got a sheet over there. If you want to sign, just leave me your email, and I'll see that you, or Tipper will see that you start getting it. And I think that's about everything. If there are not some questions, I can talk some more, but I sure a whole lot. We got a question. Good. Thank you, sir.
Do you have a lot of wild game meat recipes?
There are probably 8 or 10, but If you are really interested, talk to me afterwards. All of the cookbooks I did with my wife were game and fish and wild foods. This particular one has got, I know there are a couple of venison recipes, a wonderful venison roast her husband cooks. There's Anna Lou's squirrel. Anna Lou was my mama. And I mean, she could cook squirrel, bring tears to a glass eye. And she was a master, and she could also cook chicken like nobody's business. Now, Don is closing in on the Excalibur of chicken. He thinks anyway. We'll see, but he's reverse engineering the process, and we were talking earlier today. But we come home from church to chicken that was, well, it was finer than fine. My grandma Minnie could outcook anyone in most ways, but Mama had her beat all pieces when it came to chicken. Now that's a long-winded answer, but if you want to see me afterward, I'll put you on to about 6 other cookbooks that my wife and I did, and that's all we did were wild game, fish, and nuts, berries, fruits from nature.
I would like to hear a story connected to each of you, connected to your favorite recipe.
Okay. You want to go first? I know what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I'll tell you a story about the Arsh potato cake that I mentioned, Arsh tater, we would say. So if you don't know, Arsh is, I'm actually saying Irish, that's just like a corruption, so it means a white potato. So when I was growing up, we either had Arsh taters or we had sweet taters. You know, that was how we told the difference between what we were having for supper. But my whole life, my mom cooked this cake, Arsh tater cake, so rich, so wonderful. She'd make it at Christmas and Thanksgiving, things like that. Sometimes we could convince her to make one during the year. But finally, after I was grown and married, and of course I wanted to start making all the same recipes that I loved that she had, I started wondering, well, where did these recipes come from? And even when I had wrote it down from Mother's little card she had, it had things like a lump of butter, instead of the correct amount. So I knew it was old, so I asked her one day, I said, did you... I thought it probably come from her family, from the Jenkins or the Truetts, and I said, did Granny Gazzy make this, or one of your aunts? How did you find out about it? She said, no, years ago, when me and your daddy was first married, I worked in a dress factory in Hayesville, and I had to catch a ride with somebody. There's a lady, a Soulsby lady, her name wasn't Soulsby, her daughter is, but anyway, a lady that she lived like in Pine Log next to Brasstown. They would ride together on into Hayesville to the dress factory. And she said every once in a while us ladies at the dress factory would decide we were going to all bring something and kind of have like a potluck for our dinner. And this lady would bring this Arsh tater cake, and she said, and I asked her, I just fell in love with it. You've got to give me the recipe. And so the lady from Pine Log over there had told her, said it was just passed down in my family. I don't know, my mama made it, my grandma made it. So that's how, I just love that mother going to work, having to catch a ride in those days. Of course, they didn't have 2 cars or anything like that. On to Hayesville to the sewing factory where she works, and she learned about the Arsh tater cake, and then today it's my favorite, my favorite recipe, and also some other members of my family really love it. Let's see, you want me to answer, or you want to tell yours first?
I'll tell my story, and then we'll get the next question.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to tell a story about one of Tipper's recipes, but it could have come from me just as well because it's almost exactly alike, and it's a stack cake, a traditional mountain dessert, and I don't know what it says. Both of us especially fond memories of sweets, but Grandma Minnie, my paternal grandmother, was a wonderful cook, tiny little woman. She might have weighed 100 pounds on a really good day, but everybody was scared of her, including me, but especially Grandpa. She may have weighed 100 pounds, but she had a tongue that could flay the hide off of a 300-pound razorback hog. I can tell you right now, you didn't want to get crosswise with her. But she really was good to me as a kid and beyond. And I loved stack cake, and she could flat out make one. And she dried her own apples, did everything the old-fashioned way. She never measured anything. So any ingredients, any recipe from her was a guesstimate at most. But long after I was grown and away from Bryson City, if Mom and Daddy told her I was coming home, or my wife and I were going to be there for a weekend or whatever, I knew that when I got to Bryson City, there was a stack cake that had been made 3 days before so that all that goodness could soak through those 7 layers, and she always made 7 layers because 7 was a lucky number. I knew that there was a stack cake waiting on me. And yeah, that's an emotional memory, but it's also a mighty tasty memory. Don had a question. I'll recognize him now. But
It was a correction, actually.
oh, how might I know? Now you're correcting Tipper, right?
You're not a 5th cousin, you're a 3rd cousin twice removed. You're the 3rd.
3 and 2 is 5. Which is closer? I'll take the closer. Okay.
You're a 3rd cousin.
3rd cousin twice removed, is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, cousin Tipper, that's what I'm going to go with. Somebody, yes, sir.
You're talking about a sweet potato cake. A cake.
Yeah, a cake.
When I ate potato cakes I was born on, you used old mashed potatoes.
Yeah, yeah.
Put egg and onion and salt and pepper and
Yeah.
fry them and bake them.
Right, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never heard of Irish potato cake.
Well, and I'll echo what you said. Mama fairly regularly with leftover mashed potatoes would make potato cakes. She might.
Sometimes I'll make the mashed potatoes and then let them sit in the refrigerator 2 or 3 days and then eat.
Yeah.
That little brown crust that comes on them, it is.
Don't put Crisco in them, put bacon grease.
Well, I don't know what Crisco is, so I got 2 jars of bacon grease handy all the time.
Always.
I just really want to make a comment. You talked about the lump. Well, when I started cooking, and Mama never let me cook, so I'd ask for stuff, and she said, well, you can kind of tell. I said, is it a cup of milk or so-and-so? Well, you can kind of tell. I said, no, Mama, I can't kind of tell. You need to give me some idea of what to put in there.
Right.
It was just funny how you can, no, not me.
Well, and I think that was traditional with cooks of that generation. They, like I said, Grandma Minnie, she didn't own any measuring instruments except a spoon or something like that, which was for another purpose. But she raised a family of 9 kids and could cook like nobody's business. She made absolutely wonderful biscuits, and I have no idea the precision of the ingredients. I know pretty much what was in it, but she had one of those old time, I don't even know what they call flour mills, a cupboard-like device.
In a safe, a lot of times they have a safe.
Yeah, well, she had a pie safe too, and in my early youth, also had an ice box. She didn't have a refrigerator. And my first chore as a boy was connected with cooking, so maybe that's important. My first regular chore was to split kindling for the wood-burning stove Mama cooked on for, as before Dawn was born, we got an electric stove, and but up until I was probably 8 or 9, we had that wooden stove, and that was my first job was connected with cooking. And in fact, I want to go back to what Tipper said about the importance of food and share an anecdote. I can't go long without telling a story of some kind. I loved what Grandpa always said when the family was gathered together around a table for food or whatever. And as his later years, he talked in a whisper. You could barely hear him, but he'd say whatever he had to say about thankful for family being there and so forth and so on. But his final words were always the same. You'll see what's before you. Eat hearty. And that is a wonderful sentiment as far as I'm concerned. Yes, sir.
I'll venture one other question. I had some favorite recipes growing up. I didn't grow up in the mountains here. She was born in Franklin, but I grew up down in the flatlands. And
You have my sympathy, but you made the trip to the right place.
but every Sunday, we'd have church suppers, and one of the favorite things that people, that I loved that you bring was persimmon pudding. And, you know, in the area where I live down there, Randolph County and Gilford County, persimmon trees or persimmon pudding was very common. You had an aunt who had a persimmon tree. Well, I go anywhere else in the state, and they say, persimmon, what? But again, I see in here you've got a recipe. Does that mean that in the mountains there are more persimmon trees, or people grow them?
They're common as pig tracks. I mean, their persimmon trees are plentiful, and you can grow them. There's an Asian persimmon, which, first of all, is about 20 times, I think there's a picture in there of them side by side, of an Asian persimmon and a native persimmon. And I grow the Asian persimmons. They have another delightful factor. They don't have seeds. Wild persimmons are absolutely full of seeds, but Tipper will echo this, because I brought her a peck, and I think she went through them like Sherman through Georgia. They taste just alike. But yeah, it was, and I don't remember whether I tell the story in there or not, but the first time I ever had persimmon pudding was at either a Lions Club or a Rotary Club meeting. My dad was a member of both at different times. But anyway, it was Christmas and we went, and he said, if we're really lucky, Stella Jackson will have made a persimmon pudding. And Stella Jackson was a wonderful old black cook that cooked for those groups, and she also cooked down at the Calhoun Hotel, as it was known then. And sure enough, it was there. And there may be something finer from nature's bounty, but I ain't run across it. And they're one of two trees, or only two I know of, that come in he's and she's. And there are he persimmons, and they don't have any persimmons.
Right.
And there are she persimmons, and that's the ones that bear. And the she persimmons never fail. They'll have a crop every year. They're about as predictable as black walnuts. Black walnuts almost always have a crop because they bloom late. Well, again, we are deeply appreciative. It's sort of interesting. I started out as Tipper's mentor. Now I'm just a little tiny dust devil following in behind this whirlwind of a culinary celebrity, but I'm real happy in where I am, and we're both delighted to have an opportunity to share some thoughts, what underlies this book with you, and we've still got it up here. If you want one and haven't gotten it yet, or if you just got questions you don't want to ask in general, we'll be around for a bit. And thank you ever so much. Okay, well.
I've got a question for Tipper, because it's been a while since I got updated on this. Jim mentioned you have 250,000 followers. Can you give us some idea about the distribution of those? Where geographically?
Yeah, I mean, basically everywhere. It's interesting. Lots of people, of course, like us here in this area, that just want to hold on to the ways they grew up in, and the foods and the words and all that kind of stuff. Then there's people that, so many of you are interested in genealogy, there's people that just found out, hey, I have a connection to that area. You know, I just found out my great-great-grandfather or somebody's from there. So then they watch because they think that I'm kind of like they were, even though, I mean, you know, of course I wasn't like them exactly because I live in a different time, but they want to see what it was like. Some of them say, well, I always wondered why my grandma and grandpa said this stuff, and then I found out they moved from there and then moved to Idaho or wherever and stayed, but they kept their sayings and their foods and that kind of stuff. Then there's people like in different areas of the world. Jim and I had someone contact us from Norway, and they watched me, and they had bought the book in a bookstore in Norway. So they're just interested in the United States and I get questions like that sometimes. Well, what is Appalachia? Is it a state? You know, they're in a different country, you know, and they're not familiar with how the United States works, so I have to explain it to them. So literally everywhere, yeah, all over.
So does that mean we can make Appalachia a national thing?
I hope. I'm trying my best,
As
yeah.
long as you pronounce it right.
Yeah.
Well, it
there's-
is a state of mind. I think all of us would agree to that. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for everybody for coming. Jim and I really enjoyed it, and really feel honored to be invited, and honored to talk to you tonight.
Thank you for carrying on.